I can still feel the weight of his hand slipping across my cheek, an indignity I never imagined I would endure in my own home. My name is Vivienne Harper, and if you'd asked me 5 years ago where I thought I'd end up, I would have sworn I'd be living in a loft overlooking the Thames or running a gallery in New York. Instead, I was staring at bruises that formed angry purple patterns across my skin and wondering how I'd survive the ordeal. My father, Richard Harper, was a proud man, one who believed with unwavering conviction that family loyalty meant unquestioned obedience. My older brother, Marcus, 2 years my senior, had long been Daddy's golden boy. Anything Marcus needed, money for his studies, a car, a trip abroad, was delivered before he could even ask. When I graduated college with honors and needed a few thousand to settle my debts, I thought Daddy would be proud. I thought he'd congratulate me on my scholarships and my first job offer. Instead, he leaned back in his creaky leather armchair and said, "You've made your bed, Vivi. Now sleep in it." I believed in fairness. I believed that if our father invested tens of thousands in Marcus's education, it was only right that he would do the same for me. I believed that my degree in biomedical engineering and my job at a prestigious lab in Boston would impress him. I believed in a man who never hesitated to use his fists when words failed him. I was wrong. It started when Marcus told him I'd asked for a loan to cover research expenses. He painted me as ungrateful, a spoiled girl, who thought she deserved what she never earned. At first, I tried reason. I prepared presentations, laid out budgets, showed projections for potential patents. I watched as Daddy's eyes glazed over. Every time I spoke, I felt his ire blossom like a dark flower. When I refused to back down, when I dared stand my ground, he snapped. I'll never forget the day it happened. I was in the kitchen, measuring out cocoa powder for my afternoon tea, when I heard the thud of his boots on the linoleum. He didn't knock. "Hand over your phone," he ordered. Confused, I handed it over. On the screen was the bank statement showing the transfer request. My heart pounded. "Looks like you want money," he sneered. He struck me across the face. The world tilted, and for a moment I saw every past memory flash through my mind. My mother's laughter, my brother's teasing grin, my graduation cap flying through the air. And then I was on the floor, clutching my cheek. When I came to, he stood over me, breathing heavily. "You'll do what I say," he spat, "or you'll learn your place." It wasn't the first time he'd hit me, but it was the worst. I fled to my room, my sanctuary, and sat on the edge of my bed, tears hot against my cold cheeks. I felt small and worthless, as if every ambition I'd ever had was worthless. But as the days passed, isolation became my ally. I spent nights poring over lease agreements and property listings, mind racing. If Daddy refused to support me, then I would find another way. I would build my own empire. I started with savings, the meager stipend from my job, a grant I applied for in secret, odd freelance consultancy projects. I lived frugally, cutting out dinners with friends, baking my own bread, wearing the same 3 blazers until they wore thin. Every penny I saved was funneled into an investment account. At work, I devoured every chance to lead research. My principal investigator noticed. Soon, I had my own project, a revolutionary diagnostic device that could detect early-stage neurological disorders. The patent was pending, and investors showed interest. Still, I was careful. I kept everything off the family radar. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Miss Harper?" the voice said. Speaking. My voice was steady despite the whirlwind in my chest. "I'm calling from Horizon Properties. There's a 3-bedroom on Maple Avenue. Your old family home. It's on the market." I nearly dropped the phone. Our house, my sanctuary, the stage of my worst memories, was up for sale. "I'd like to bid," I said. There was a pause, then the agent cleared her throat. "The highest current offer is significant. It's attracting attention." "That's fine," I replied, voice barely a whisper. "I'm interested." That night, I lay awake planning. If I secured the funds, and I would, I would do more than just buy them out. I would evict them. I would show them that strength is forged in adversity. The bidding war was brutal. Marcus sneered when I mentioned the address, calling me foolish. But when the sale closed, I stood in front of the agents, my papers in hand, and watched as Dad's eyes bulged with disbelief. "You can't do this," he said. I smiled, the memory of every bruise flashing behind my eyelids. I already did. I watched as they packed their lives into cardboard boxes, the walls they once owned now under my name. I didn't take pleasure in their fear. I took pleasure in my freedom. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I watched their final moving van pull away down the street, its taillights fading into dusk, and felt a strange mixture of triumph and emptiness. The house that once held my nightmares now stood silent under my name. It was mine, every brick, every creaking floorboard, a testament to what I had endured and overcome. The emptiness settled in as I turned the key in the front door for the first time. Dust motes danced in the fading light, and echoes of laughter, arguments, and footsteps haunted the halls. I walked through each room, mapping out my plans. The parlor would become my research atelier. The sunroom, a place to meet investors. Upstairs, one bedroom would be my sanctuary, the place where I would no longer tremble at raised voices. The others would be rented to scholars who needed quiet study spaces. Their rent funneled back into my venture. I started immediately. Weeks of renovations began. Walls repainted in calming grays, thick rugs laid to muffle sound, windows sealed and rewired for lab-grade ventilation. I installed hidden cameras to ensure security, not to spy on neighbors, but to guarantee that no unwanted guests ever returned. Each swing of the hammer, each coat of paint, felt like I was reclaiming myself. At work, word filtered through the lab grapevine, Vivienne was unstoppable. My patent was approved, and preliminary trials on the diagnostic device yielded promising results. I recruited a small team, brilliant minds who believed in the mission, and set up a prototype workshop in that sunlit parlor. Late nights were spent soldering sensors, calibrating microchips, and comparing data sets. I watched as our prototype detected early neural markers with alarming accuracy. The future I had dreamed of was finally materializing. But success attracted attention. Investors sought presentations. Trade journals wanted interviews. I stood before crowds, my voice unwavering, as I described a device that could save lives. I thought of Father and Marcus, picturing their faces as they read the headlines. Harper heiress turned tech visionary. The irony was sweet. Yet every victory came with a cost. Sometimes, in the still of night, I awoke to the creaks of settling wood and felt a pang of loneliness. I had built walls to protect myself, but I had also built walls around my heart. Friends drifted away, unable or unwilling to understand my obsession. My relationship with Marcus had collapsed entirely. He refused my calls, spit venom at my name when he saw it emblazoned in the press. Father, I later learned, was living in a rental 2 towns over, unable to sell their old house fast enough. I forced myself to eat proper meals again, forced myself to sleep at least 6 hours, forced my mind to rest. But the drive to perfect the device consumed me. I knew that if I faltered, detractors would say I was just a woman with a vendetta, not a scientist. Then the call came. "Miss Harper? This is Dr. Elena Rossi at St. Mark's Neurological Institute. We'd like to schedule clinical trials." My heart ratcheted up. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. On the day of the first trial, I stood in the old sunroom-turned-lab, surrounded by volunteers, technicians, and Dr. Rossi herself. The air hummed with the promise of breakthrough. I guided the first patient into place, fitted the device, and activated the scan. The room held its breath as data streamed across monitors, displaying patterns I had only dreamed possible. It worked. Tears stung my eyes as I watched the readings confirm what I'd built, an early detection system that could change the course of countless lives. I thought of my own journey, every bruise, every sleepless night, every moment of humiliation, and realized that this was more than revenge. It was redemption. The results catapulted me into the spotlight. Headlines splashed across screens. Harper's breakthrough, a new era in neurological care. Invitations to speak at conferences poured in. My world expanded beyond the narrow corridors of my childhood home into grand auditoriums and global symposiums. But as I stood on stage at my first international conference, eyes on me expectant, I felt a tremor of doubt. The applause thundered, yet I longed for something more than validation. I longed for peace. Before the final panel session, I slipped backstage and called my best friend, Marisol. Her voice, warm and steady, anchored me. "You've done it," she whispered. "But remember why you started." I closed my eyes, breathing in that reminder. This was never just about money or revenge. It was about proving that control has a price. And sometimes, the only way to take it back is to build something greater in its place. As I walked back on stage, I raised my chin and let the applause wash over me. But in my mind, I was already turning toward the next chapter, one that would test everything I'd built and force me to confront the ghosts of my past. Night had fallen over Maple Avenue by the time I returned from the conference. The house stood in silhouette under the moonlight, its windows aglow with the soft hum of the laboratory inside. I felt a surge of exhilaration as I climbed the steps, keys rattling in my hand. Tonight, I wasn't the battered daughter cowering at raised voices. I was Vivienne Harper, the woman who wrestled power back from the very people who thought they owned her. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of solder and coffee. My team had stayed late, calibrating the next generation of prototypes. Dr. Rossi's research assistants lingered at benches, adjusting electrodes and reviewing patient charts. I paused in the doorway, watching them work, the delicate dance of minds driven by a singular purpose. "Belle," I called softly to the lab lead, a neuroscientist with a knack for humor as dry as London autumn. "How's our data looking?" She glanced up, her auburn curls catching the lamplight. "Promising," she said, voice hushed with reverence. "The device picked up sub-threshold signals in nearly half of our early-stage cohort this week. That's beyond our projections." I joined her at the workstation, eyes scanning the graphs streaming across multiple screens. "And the sensitivity?" "Above 92%. Specificity at 87. If we can push specificity above 90, we'll be golden for FDA submission." She tapped the keyboard, switching to a series of brain-mapping visuals, intricate labyrinths of neural pathways illuminated in technicolor brilliance. I traced a pathway with my finger. "It started here, right? The zygomatic arch?" She nodded. "Early degeneration markers. We're seeing patterns in subjects as young as 40. As the numbers sank in, a singular thought crystallized. This was bigger than any of us. Bigger than Marcus's trust fund. Bigger than Father's wrath. This was a revolution. Yet, as I watched Belle work, my mind flicked back to home. Weeks ago, I'd installed a simple intercom in the kitchen, a relic from the old Harper Estate DIY days. I sauntered over and pressed the talk button. "Vivienne," the crackling voice of my house manager answered. "Someone's here to see you, he says it's urgent." My pulse quickened. "Send him in?" Moments later, a slim figure strode into the lab. Marcus. He looked gaunt, weariness etched into the corners of his eyes. The arrogance that once defined him was gone, replaced by something like vulnerability. "You wanted to see me?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. He swallowed. I need help, Vivi." I raised an eyebrow. "With what? You left me no quarter when I needed you." His gaze faltered. He glanced at Belle, then back at me. "It's the house." "No, not the house. Something's wrong with Dad." My breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He ran a hand through his dark curls. "He collapsed this morning. They took him to St. Mary's. They think it's neurological, like memory loss or early dementia." The irony was palpable. Father, the man who wielded power as a weapon, now powerless before his own mind. I stared at Marcus, torn between years of anguish and the echo of our childhood. Our fleeting alliance in secret adventures, the brother who once taught me how to ride a bicycle in the backyard. My heart thundered. "What do you want from me?" He took a trembling step closer. "They asked about you, about the device. I told them it could help." "Viv, this could save him from losing the only thing he truly had, his memories." Silence stretched between us. I glanced at Belle, whose expectant look pushed me forward. The lab seemed to shrink around me, the hum of machines, a heartbeat speeding too fast. I turned back to Marcus. You know this device isn't approved for treatment. It's diagnostic. It won't cure. He shook his head. It's all we have, please, for Father's sake. My chest tightened. Each memory of his violence surged through me. The sting of his hand, the fear that once consumed me. Forgiveness felt impossible. And yet, standing here in the place I reclaimed, in the culmination of every sacrifice I made, I realized this was my chance to rewrite my narrative. I looked at Marcus, for the first time seeing him not as the golden son, but as a frightened boy clinging to what stability remained. All right, I said, voice trembling with a steely resolve. But we do this my way. He nodded, relief washing over his features. I turned to Belle. Book the hospital room. We're going to run a private trial tonight. Her eyes widened. You're serious? I met her gaze. I'm serious. As the team mobilized, I felt the weight of destiny settle on my shoulders. This was more than revenge. This was redemption, and the ultimate test of everything I'd built. The night sky pressed against the windows, as if urging me onward. I stepped into the role fate had offered. Savior, survivor, architect of my own destiny. The machine whirred to life, sensors clicking into place. Marcus watched, hope and fear tangled in his gaze. I placed the final electrode on Father's battered crown. A crown he never earned, but one I would help him keep. And as the first signals crackled across the screen, I whispered to the shadows of the past. This is for you, Dad. You'll remember. Maybe not the love you never gave, but the person you made me become. The readings spiked. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. The hum of the prototype circuitry filled the small hospital suite, a metallic sigh that seemed to bridge two worlds, the one I had built and the one I was about to change. I stood at the edge of the bed where Father lay, his eyes closed, the life behind them flickering like a candle about to be snuffed. Marcus hovered nearby, anxiety etched into every line of his face. For a moment, time slowed. The bustle of Belle and the team assembling equipment faded into a distant echo. All that remained was me, Vivian Harper, daughter, scientist, guardian of the only man who ever broke me. And now, I would attempt to heal him. I inhaled, tasting antiseptic and possibility. With steady hands, I adjusted the final electrodes around his temples, careful not to pinch the paper-thin hospital mattress beneath him. Ready? Belle whispered. I was born ready, I replied, voice firm yet tender. Marcus closed his eyes. Good luck, Vivi. I nodded, and Belle pressed the activation sequence. Lights blinked, monitors flickered, and a soft whir signaled the device coming to life. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched the readouts, lines of data that would either erase or restore the man who haunted my past. The first few seconds were silent, but for the machine's hum. Then, the monitors leapt, waveforms dancing across the screen in patterns so intricate they resembled constellations. We have signal, Belle announced, voice trembling. I peered closer. Focus on the hippocampal region. Any anomalies? She tapped at the touchscreen. Look, there's a stabilization of synaptic activity. A swell of hope crested in my chest. While we'd only intended to diagnose, for which FDA approval awaited, what I saw now hinted at something more. Potential neurorestoration. Marcus reached for my hand, and I squeezed back. Dad? He murmured, voice thick. Can you hear me? Father's eyelids fluttered. His brow creased, confusion clouding his features. Vivi? Vivian? Tears blurred my vision. Yes, Dad? It's me. He attempted a smile, faint as a ghost. I remember you. My knees threatened to buckle. You're remembering. Over the next hour, we tracked changes, minute improvements that built into undeniable recovery. Memories flowed back in staccato bursts. Mother's lullabies, childhood birthdays, Marcus's first bicycle ride. Each recollection seemed to rekindle a spark of the man he was before cruelty consumed him. When the device powered down, the room lay still, suspended between triumph and relief. Father's breathing evened, and he opened his eyes fully. "Where am I?" His voice was weak. I knelt at his bedside. "You're safe, Dad. You're in Maple Avenue, my home." Recognition flickered. My home. Marcus swallowed. "The house you sold, she bought it back for you." Father's gaze shifted to mine, comprehension dawning. Pain and regret warred in his eyes, tears welled. "Vivienne." I swallowed back my own tears. "Rest now." He closed his eyes and a silence fell, soft, sacred. In that moment, I felt the walls I'd built not just around me but around my heart begin to crack. But the road to healing would be long. Rehabilitation specialists warned that sustained improvement hinged on continued neural stimulation and emotional support. The device had unlocked memories, but what remained to be seen was whether forgiveness could flourish alongside recovery. We transferred Father to a private wing, outfitted with our sensor array. Daily sessions in the sunroom-turned-lab followed. Gentle cognitive exercises, guided reminiscence, and incremental increases in device calibration. With each session, fragmented memories coalesced. Meanwhile, the world outside clamored for details. Press inquiries, legal consultations, investor summits, they all demanded part of me. Yet I refused to neglect Father's care. I parceled my time carefully, delegating conference calls and interviews to Belle when possible, rushing back to Maple Avenue at every interlude. One evening, weeks into treatment, I stood at the windowsill of my old bedroom, gazing at the garden where Mother once tended roses. The scent of blooms drifted through the open window. I closed my eyes and listened. Cicadas, distant traffic, the steady drip of the irrigation system I'd updated. It was a symphony of life. Marcus approached quietly, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed me one, and we stood in companionable silence. "Thank you," he said softly. I turned to him. For what? He hesitated. For saving him, for giving us a chance. I traced the rim of my cup. "It's not over. He has a long path ahead." "And he'll have you," Marcus replied. I smiled, bittersweet. "And what about me? Do I get a chance?" His gaze was steady. "You already did, Vivi. You took control of your life. You built an empire on your terms." I cut him off gently. It wasn't just an empire. It was my reclamation. Behind us, the room hummed with quiet purpose. Father's soft snores drifted down the corridor, and I realized that while the device had mended his mind, it was the act of care and forgiveness that mended my soul. But peace, I knew, was fleeting. A new challenge was stirring, regulatory scrutiny over our unsanctioned trial. The FDA's looming presence threatened to unravel everything, and there was someone in the shadows, an old adversary who wouldn't hesitate to exploit our vulnerability. Late that night, as I drafted responses to stern letters and prepared for congressional hearings, my phone buzzed with a single message. "Great power comes at a price. Be ready." My blood chilled. In the mirror's reflection, I saw a woman transformed, stronger, wiser, but wary of the next storm on the horizon. I closed my laptop and stared at the message again. This story was far from over. Dive into the next chapter with me. See you soon. The sterile lights of the congressional hearing room glared down as I stepped up to the witness stand. Vivienne Harper, daughter of a disgraced patriarch turned heroine of neurological innovation. Murmurs rippled through the gallery as reporters adjusted cameras. Lawmakers shuffled notes, and investors watched through hidden live streams. This was the moment I had both craved and feared. The world's judgment on the machine we'd built in secret, and the unsanctioned trial that saved my father's mind. Opening statements began. Senator Caldwell, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, cleared his throat. "Ms. Harper, you bypassed FDA protocols, conducted private clinical trials, and introduced an unapproved device into medical practice. Do you understand the gravity of your actions?" I inhaled, recalling the nights in the sunroom, the hum of the circuitry, Father's faltering breath. I pictured Marcus's anxious face behind me. I pictured Belle's unwavering support. My voice, when it emerged, was calm yet unyielding. I understand. Yet I stand by every choice I made. My father's life hung in the balance. Protocol is vital, but so is innovation. Without action, science remains theory and people continue to suffer. Gasps rose from the audience. Senator Caldwell's lips thinned. A barrage of questioning followed. Liability, ethics, long-term data. I parried each with precise clarity. Trial results, safety protocols retroactively approved by emergency ethics committees, peer-reviewed endorsements awaiting publication. But as the hours dragged on, I felt fatigue creep in, my rehearsed convictions fray under intense scrutiny. Mid-hearing, I paused, took a slow breath, and leaned forward. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Whispers circulated, some bemused, some impressed. The pivot broke the tension, humanized my testimony. Even Senator Caldwell paused, a flicker of something, interest, crossing his features. By the time I stepped down, the tide had shifted. Unexpected whispers of bipartisan support buzzed in the corridors. But victory tasted bittersweet. Outside, protesters and supporters clashed. News feeds splintered between outrage and acclaim. I realized then that my invention's power extended beyond healing. It had ignited a societal debate on who holds authority in science, the gatekeepers or the guerrilla researchers who dare defy them. That evening, I returned to the house, my sanctuary and the crucible of my journey. I found Belle and Marcus waiting, the glow of monitor screens lighting their determined faces. Belle nodded with data summaries. Marcus exhaled with relief. "They're drafting a special fast-track bill," Belle said. "If it passes, we'll have conditional approval within months." Marcus grinned. "They're calling you the hero scientist of Maple Avenue." I allowed myself a small smile before the wait returned. The real work begins now. Approval or no, we need to prepare for large-scale trials, manufacturing. The sunroom, once a personal laboratory, now loomed as a global operations center. Late into the night, I orchestrated logistics, penned emails to manufacturing partners, and sketched out training protocols for hospitals. The drive that once fueled revenge now propelled global change. Yet, as dawn approached, exhaustion pressed in and doubts surfaced about sustainability, about responsibility, about the human cost of rushed progress. I paused at the window, watching the horizon shift from black to pale gold. The revival of my father's mind was only one victory in a larger battle, redefining the boundaries of medicine and the morals that guide it. And as I traced patterns of morning light on the hardwood floor, I asked myself, was I ready for the world I had unleashed? The answer whispered back in the creak of settling boards and the hum of circuitry. I had no choice but to lead forward. Whenever you're ready, let's dive back into the journey. Each morning, I rose before dawn. The world might have seen a successful scientist, but inside those walls, I was still the frightened daughter who learned that power was sweetest when taken back. Today, however, my fight had new stakes, scaling our device from a pioneering prototype to an indispensable clinical tool. I moved through the renovated house, sunroom ablaze with equipment, parlor piled high with legal briefs, and felt a surge of purpose. Investors were touring the lab later, and I needed everything flawless. I stopped at the kitchen, poured strong coffee, and took a moment to center myself. In the gleam of the sink faucet, I saw Vivienne, survivor and savior, tuned to a precision I'd never known before. Before the first investor arrived, Marcus joined me, handing over a sleek presentation tablet. Unlike before, his voice now carried respect. "Board meeting starts at 9, he said. "They want numbers on manufacturing projections and a breakdown of unit costs." I nodded and sipped my coffee. "Let's do it." In the conference room, my father's old dining room, I led them through the slides. Patients served, trial outcomes, projected revenue growth, and the social impact metrics that measured lives transformed. The investors' faces transitioned from polite interest to keen engagement. By the end, several hands shot up, eager to fund production lines and distribution networks. As we wrapped up, one prominent VC, Ms. Langford, stayed behind. "Ms. Harper, you've delivered more than numbers. You've delivered hope. I want to lead the Series B round." Her words lit a fire in me. Thank you. Let's redefine care together. Later, after I sent the formal proposals, I retreated to my sanctuary, an upstairs bedroom refashioned into a meditation space. The walls here were painted a soothing jade, and floor cushions lined the windows. I sat cross-legged, closed my eyes, and breathed. Despite the triumphs, exhaustion clung to me, and shadows of old trauma lurked still. I slipped my hand into the inner pocket of my blazer and pulled out a folded note. Father's shaky handwriting. Forgive me, Vivienne. I traced the words with trembling fingertips. Was forgiveness enough for the years I'd lost to fear? Could I reconcile a lifetime of pain with this fleeting grace? My phone buzzed, dragging me back, a calendar alert for the upcoming International Symposium in Berlin. They'd invited me to keynote. This was my chance to expand our reach across continents and cement the device's global footprint. That evening, under the soft glow of a chandelier, I dined with Belle and Marcus. Over roasted vegetables and grilled salmon, we discussed delegation, recruiting regional managers, securing regulatory liaisons in Europe, and prepping patents for Asian markets. Belle raised a toast. To Vivienne, who taught us that brilliance isn't born, it's forged. I clinked glasses, feeling the warmth of shared triumphs. Yet, beneath the celebration, a knot of tension twisted. One email from a competitor, Drive Alistair Crane, warned of a legal challenge, alleging patent infringement. I recognized his name from the industry's darker corridors, where lawsuits were weapons and accusations were ammunition to break rivals. After dinner, I returned to the lab. The prototypes hummed quietly. Marcus joined me, worry clouding his features. Crane's filing tomorrow, he said. He's claiming your initial trial was fraudulent evidence. My heart sank. Crane was infamous for predatory litigation. His strategy, drown innovation in legal fees until it drowns. I straightened, voice firm. Then we'll counter. We have documentation, ethics approvals, everything. We'll expose him for what he is, a bully afraid of change. Marcus nodded, admiration shining in his eyes. We're with you, Vivi, always. That night, I drafted the response, every detail meticulously cited, trial protocols, emergency waivers, patient consents. I breathed life into the narrative of ethical urgency, the moral imperative that drove us beyond red tape. When I finished, exhaustion weighed heavy, but resolve burned brighter. I gazed at Father's portrait on the mantel, once a symbol of patriarchal dominance, now a testament to transformation. The distance between us had narrowed. He was recovering, but so was I. As I left the lab, I paused in the hallway, feeling the pulse of the house, the convergence of past and future. Tomorrow, I'd stand before the world again, in Berlin, before Congress, and in courtrooms. Every stage demanded a different Vivienne Harper, survivor, visionary, warrior. Stepping outside onto the balcony, I looked up at the moon, its pale light a beacon in the darkness. I raised a fist to the sky and whispered, "Bring it on." The flight to Berlin was a blur of clouds and deadlines. I leaned against the window, earphones in place, reviewing slides on my tablet, clinical data charts, patient testimonials, patent timelines. Around me, well-dressed attendees for the Global Neurotech Summit filed down the aisles, each lost in their own world of ambition. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. Berlin would be my stage, and I intended to captivate it. Touchdown. The crisp air of early autumn greeted me as I emerged from the terminal, the city's blend of historic architecture and modern innovation unfolding beneath a sapphire sky. My driver navigated cobblestone streets, and I watched in fascination as halogen streetlights blinked on, casting long shadows across the Spree River. At the Hotel Adlon, I prepared for the keynote. The grand ballroom, with its crystal chandeliers and ornate moldings, felt like a palace. My heart pounded, but my resolve was steel. Moments before I took the stage, Marisol's voice crackled through a video call. She was back in Boston, coordinating press coverage. "You've got this," she said, giving me the boost I needed. "Remember why you started." I nodded, despite the pixelated crackle of the connection. "See you on the news tomorrow." Then, the announcer called my name. I stepped into the light, met with applause that swelled like a tidal wave. At the lectern, I paused, scanning the audience. Neurologists, investors, policymakers, eyes alight with curiosity and expectation. Good morning, and thank you for welcoming me to Berlin, I began. My journey began not in a lab or a boardroom, but in a home overshadowed by violence and doubt. Today I stand before you not as a victim, but as a scientist determined to turn adversity into discovery. Quote. Images flashed behind me. A childhood photo of father and me, bruised cheek concealed by hair, a snapshot of the Maple Avenue sunroom transformed into a lab, the first clinical trial in action. I spoke of innovation born from necessity, of a daughter's love sparking a revolution in neurological care. I laid out the device's capabilities, the trial outcomes, and plans for global rollout. Questions came fast: long-term efficacy, cost accessibility, cultural considerations. I answered each, weaving in personal anecdotes that humanized the data. By the end, the audience rose to their feet, not in deference to status, but in recognition of shared hope. Backstage, reporters crowded around, microphones thrust forward. I navigated the frenzy with practiced calm, highlighting collaboration over competition, empathy over ego. That evening, I attended a networking gala in a vaulted hall that once served as a palace chapel. Conversations sparkled like the champagne flutes in hand. European partnerships, African pilot programs, open-source models for developing nations. As I moved through the crowd, I spotted Dr. Alistair Crane. Stern features carved in disapproval, his entourage clustered like shadowy sentinels. He approached, gaze cold. Ms. Harper, he said, voice measured, congratulations on Berlin, but tell me, how do you plan to defend against my infringement suit? Do you have the evidence to back your claims? I met his stare, unflinching. Yes, Dr. Crane, I have every document, every approval, and I have the truth. He smirked. We shall see. Later, as live strings accompanied a harpist in the gallery, I retreated to the balcony overlooking the river Spree. The water glistened under the moonlight, a ribbon of silver through the night. I pulled out my phone, a message from Bell. FDA Fast Track approved. Manufacturing can begin next week. My heart soared. Then, another message popped up from an unknown number. You've crossed a line. They won't let you win. No signature. A chill slithered down my spine. Even here, across an ocean, my past had followed. Yet the night air was invigorating, bracing. I inhaled deeply, letting the cool wind carry away doubt. The world had opened its doors to me, but the fight was far from over. Returning inside, I raised a glass to an empty courtyard. To the battles ahead, I whispered. When you're ready, join me for the next chapter, because this story is just gathering momentum. The dawn after Berlin brought a cascade of headlines. Harper's breakthrough reaches Europe. FDA Fast Track, a new era in brain health. My inbox bulged with congratulations, partnership inquiries, and a few polite warnings from legal counsel. Yet beneath the surface of triumph, uncertainty churned. Back in Boston, the Maple Avenue house hummed with activity. Production blueprints unfurled across the dining table, and Bell coordinated logistics with quiet intensity. Marcus fielded calls with the board of our newly formed foundation, balancing investor demands with ethical considerations. I found myself oscillating between the exhilaration of success and the relentless pressure to sustain it. One evening, as I strolled through the sunlit parlor draped in warm lamplight, I paused at the bay window. Outside, the garden glowed with blossoms I'd planted to celebrate my new beginning. I traced their petals with my eyes, resilience in every bud. Then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the Ministry of Health in London, an invitation to partner on a national pilot program. The chance to impact thousands, possibly millions, waiting in the balance. I booked a flight on a moment's notice and touched down at Heathrow the next afternoon. The callous air of bureaucracy greeted me as I navigated sterile corridors. In the grand offices of the ministry, officials in tailored suits and crisp ties sat behind polished mahogany desks. Ms. Harper, began Lord Pembroke, the Minister of Health, his accent rolling like distant hills. Your device has the potential to transform our healthcare system, but we have one concern: accessibility. We cannot have a divide between those who can pay and those who cannot. I met his gaze. My vision has always been universal access. We're drafting a tiered pricing model. Higher income brackets subsidize lower income patients. Our goal, equitable distribution. He nodded thoughtfully. Proceed. But know this. If you can deliver on promise, Britain will lead the way. If not, we will revert to traditional protocols. The stakes crystallized. Success in London meant a blueprint for global equity. Failure meant reputational ruin and potential dismantling of our fragile coalition. I returned to Boston with renewed urgency. Days blurred into weeks as we finalized pricing tiers, negotiated with insurance providers, and programmed devices for multilingual interfaces. The Maple Avenue house, once a sanctuary of solitude, buzzed with translators, policy analysts, and community advocates. Through it all, I leaned on the lessons of my past: transparency, collaboration, and unwavering moral compass. The brothers and sisters who felt forgotten, those whom father dismissed, would have their chance. This was the true victory I'd been seeking. But late one night, as I signed off on final contracts, the lights flickered. The network went dark. Panic rippled through the team. A power surge, Bell muttered, eyes rifling through error logs. Suddenly, every system locked down. Screens went black. My heart thumped. We were under cyber attack. Bell's face turned pale. They're inside our firewall, encrypting data and demanding ransom. In an instant, the room's hum turned to a strangled silence. The adversary was no longer Dr. Crane or bureaucratic red tape. Now, faceless hackers threatened to erase everything. I paced, decisions firing faster than thought. We could pay the ransom, risking emboldening criminals. Resist, risking data loss and global rollback. I squared my shoulders. Disconnect the server from external networks. Initiate the backup protocols. Bell's fingers flew over the keyboard. We're isolating the mainframe, she confirmed, voice taut. But the ransom note, they want $40 million in cryptocurrency. Marcus slammed a fist on the table. They can't be serious. I swallowed, though anger surged. They underestimated what we're capable of. I grabbed my phone. Get our cybersecurity partner online. Full lockdown. As Bell and the team secured the systems, I stared at the screens. My life's work flickering on the edge of oblivion. The house felt colder, the shadows longer. A memory drifted in. Father's hand, raised in anger. My defense had been physical reclamation. Now I needed a different kind of defense, one forged in unity and trust. I turned to my team. We will not be held hostage. We rebuild from the backup, inform authorities, and expose them. And when we do, we'll show the world that resilience isn't just a slogan, it's our reality. Marcus nodded, determination blazing. Bell cracked a small smile, tapping a command. The lights flickered back to life. The data streamed onto the recovery servers, every file intact. Relief washed over me. But the threat remained. Somewhere, a faceless enemy lurked. I exhaled, hands trembling. This isn't the end. It's a reminder that innovation demands vigilance. Quote. Outside, dawn crept through the windows, chasing away the night's threats. I looked at my team, my chosen family, and realized, together, we would protect this vision at any cost. And the next battle, I knew, was already forming on the horizon. The sun dipped low over Maple Avenue, painting the hedges in molten gold as I exited the sunroom-turned-lab. The hum of restored servers felt like a heartbeat returning to normal, but my mind raced ahead. Regulatory filings, crisis communications, rebuilding trust. Even in triumph, there was no rest. I paused on the porch, inhaling the evening air thick with rose and damp earth. My gaze drifted to the lawn, where Father's restored laugh echoed faintly as he walked with his physical therapist. The tremors in his hands all but gone. Each step he took was a testament to our progress. A progress I vowed to protect. Inside, Bell greeted me with an urgent message. Dr. Rossi had a breakthrough in data analysis. The device's adaptive algorithms were improving predictive accuracy, not just detecting early degeneration, but forecasting progression trajectories weeks in advance. This could redefine patient care, Bell said, excitement lighting her eyes. We need to patent the algorithm and run new trials. A smile tugged at my lips. Just when I thought we'd reached the summit, a new peak appeared. "Let's do it," I said. The next week surged past in a whirlwind. We drafted extended trial protocols, recruited volunteers through our foundation, and collaborated with bioinformatics specialists. The Maple Avenue lab became a crucible of innovation, the scent of solder mingling with coffee and possibility. But behind every triumph lurked a challenge. Marcus, now vice chair of the foundation, cornered me one evening in the kitchen, concern etched in his brow. "Viv, you've been running on fumes. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Or took a day off?" I exhaled, fatigue weighing in my bones. "I'll rest when this is secure." He took my hand. "And what about you?" His question struck deeper than any regulatory threat. At that moment, I realized I'd stitched my identity so tightly to the mission that I'd lost myself. "I'll be fine," I lied. That night, sleep eluded me. My thoughts spiraled. New patents, pending partnerships, Dr. Crane's looming lawsuit, cyber threats. I rose and wandered the house, eventually settling in Father's study, the room where he once wielded his authority. I opened his old desk drawer and retrieved a leather-bound journal, my grandfather's. Its pages, yellowed with time, held musings on resilience, duty, and the burdens of legacy. I flipped to a random entry. "Strength is not in domination, but in rising when the world knocks you down." I traced the words and felt a familiar spark. My grandfather had been a man of vision, tempered by compassion, qualities I aspired to channel. The next morning, I called a full team meeting in the parlor. My voice was firmer than I felt. "We're advancing our platform to predictive care. We'll submit amendments to the ethics committee, but we'll also implement wellness programs for our core team. No one works beyond 12-hour shifts without rest. Our success depends on each of you and on me." Belle and Marcus exchanged looks, relief washing across their faces. Belle raised an eyebrow. "A mandatory self-care initiative, Harper style." I nodded, a grin breaking through. "Yes, and you'll thank me later." With that, we drafted schedules, rotating days off, team retreats, meditation sessions in the meditation room I'd created. For the first time in months, I saw camaraderie blossoming beyond the lab benches. Then, just as momentum built, an email arrived from Dr. Crane's attorney, detailing a federal injunction filing set for the following week. The suit claimed intellectual property theft, seeking to halt production and seize all research materials. The timing was devastating, just as predictive trials were to begin. At dinner, the team looked to me, trust shining in their eyes. I closed my laptop, the weight settling across my shoulders. "We fight," I declared. "We counter with our patent filings, our documented approvals, and our proof of priority. We hold the line for our patients, our families, and the legacy we're building." Belle leaned forward. "And we document every step, transparent, traceable." Marcus raised his glass. "To holding the line." I glanced around, inspiration kindling. "To the future, our future." Glass met glass, and the resonance echoed through the halls, a defiant hymn against every barrier. That night, as I locked up the lab and passed Father's study, I lingered at the door. I placed my hand on the journal, a silent vow to honor the past while forging ahead. Tomorrow, the courtroom awaits, but tonight, I rest on the shoulders of my ancestors and the strength of my chosen family. The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen curtains, illuminating the half-finished stack of legal briefs on the table. I cradled a cup of tea, its warmth seeping into my hands, a fragile comfort before the storm. Today, we faced the federal injunction hearing, a legal crucible designed to crush fledgling pioneers. In the lab, phones glowed with messages of support, but I knew that support alone wouldn't sway the gavel. I gathered Belle and Marcus in the sunlit parlor, the grandeur of the reclaimed living room imposing silent gravity. "We need a strategy that goes beyond evidence," I began. "We need a story." Belle frowned. "A narrative?" "Yes, a narrative that humanizes our mission. We'll invite the judge to witness firsthand the people we're helping, the patients whose lives hinge on early detection." I paused, letting the idea settle. We'll bring them here to Maple Avenue and show the human cost of delay. Marcus nodded, eyes fierce. We can't just argue law, we must argue life. In the weeks that followed, despite the relentless pace of trial preparations, we transformed the house into a living showcase. Patient portraits adorned the hallway, hundreds of faces, each with a story of struggle, hope, and gratitude. Testimonials lined the walls, handwritten notes, photographs with tiny blossoms pressed beneath the glass. On the day of the hearing, my high heels clicked against marble as I led a caravan of patients, legal team, and journalists into the courthouse's grand foyer. Reporters whispered, cameras flickered, the opposition's lawyers bristled at our display, but the judge's stern expression softened as she observed the mosaic of human resilience. Inside the courtroom, the injunction hearing commenced. Dr. Crane's attorneys presented scathing arguments about procedural lapses and unapproved enhancements. I watched, silent and focused, as the walls of legalese threatened to close in. When my turn came, I rose and delivered not just facts, but faces and voices. Your Honor, this is Maria Rodriguez, I said, pointing to a woman in her early 60s, who winced as she stood. She was diagnosed at stage 3 last year. Without early detection, she wouldn't be here today. Maria lifted her chin. They saved my life. I continued, introducing volunteers. A young teacher with Parkinson's under control due to early therapy. A retired chef whose cognitive decline reversed a year of uncertainty. Each voice rang clear, cutting through the sterile legal atmosphere. Your Honor, I said, voice steady, we are not asking for leniency. We are asking for the chance to save lives without the arbitrary barrier of bureaucracy. Our protocols are rigorous, our ethics unquestionable, and our patients standing here before you are living proof. The courtroom fell into reflective silence. Even Dr. Crane's lead counsel seemed momentarily disarmed. The judge tapped her pen. I will take these testimonies under advisement. Expect a ruling within 48 hours. Her gavel struck. Firm, decisive. Outside, we exhaled as a team. The patients hugged us, tears of relief and gratitude mingling. Belle beamed, and Marcus squeezed my shoulder. That night, back at Maple Avenue, I sat on the back porch, stars overhead. Marcus brought me hot chocolate. You took the fight to their conscience, he said quietly. I leaned back, tracing constellations in the sky. Conscience is the last frontier. The next morning, an email arrived. The injunction was denied. The judge's ruling praised our patient-centered approach and denied Dr. Crane's request for emergency relief, noting that halting our work would inflict irreparable harm on those we served. Triumph surged, but I tempered my elation. This war was far from over. Patent disputes, regulatory approvals, and corporate interests loomed on the horizon. Yet, the knowledge that we had bridged law and humanity buoyed my spirit. In the days that followed, Maple Avenue thrummed with cautious optimism. We expanded clinical sites, onboarded new staff, and negotiated manufacturing timelines with global partners. One evening, I found Father in the sunroom, leaning over the prototype baseplate as Belle installed the next iteration's circuit board. You've turned our home into a beacon of hope, he said softly. I never imagined I'd see the day. Tears stung my eyes. You helped me see it too. He nodded, placing a hand on mine. Forgiveness gave both of us a second chance. I smiled through my tears, and we're making the most of it. As I left the sunroom, I felt the weight of legacy and responsibility settle lightly on my shoulders. No longer a burden, but a mantle of purpose. Ahead lay regulatory landscapes, patent finales, and market launches. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment of stillness, gazing at the house we reclaimed, its walls echoing with stories of pain, transformed into purpose. Emerald tendrils of dawn wound through the maple trees, lining the drive as I stepped onto the porch, a travel mug cradled in my hands. The world felt charged, magnetic with the promise of progress. We had navigated courtroom battles, corporate overtures, and cyber threats. But each victory was a reminder. The mission demanded no complacency. I entered the sunroom lab where Belle was overseeing the enrollment of our largest volunteer cohort yet. Patients from diverse backgrounds, urban, rural, young, old, each placed in front of the scanning apparatus. Heated debates over data privacy and cross-border transfers had finally settled on robust anonymized protocols. I observed quietly, marveling at the symbiosis of human resilience and technological precision. Marcus emerged from the parlor, clutching a letter embossed with the royal seal of Buckingham Palace. His grin was wide, almost boyish. Your invitation to Buckingham Palace arrived this morning. The Queen wants to meet you in person. My breath caught. An audience with the Queen herself was an honor beyond imagination. It's a ceremonial reception, Marcus continued. Her Majesty wishes to honor contributions to medical science and global health. I nodded, pulse racing. Let's accept. The prospect of recognition was surreal, but beneath the anticipation lay a deeper purpose: forging diplomatic alliances that could accelerate equitable access. Days later, I stood beneath the ornate archways of Buckingham Palace, the weight of ceremonial decorum balanced by the hum of expectation. Royals, dignitaries, and luminaries flowed through gilded halls. I wore a simple navy sheath, understated professional, as I awaited the Queen's arrival. Her Majesty, regal and poised, greeted me with warmth. Ms. Harper, your work has reached far beyond the lab. You have given the world a beacon of hope. Her voice, soft yet authoritative, resonated. Your Majesty, I curtsied, it is an honor beyond words. She smiled, gesturing toward a small group observing devices displayed on a velvet-draped table. Explain these to us, she said. I guided her and key advisors through the device's function, explaining the shift toward predictive neurology and proactive care. The Queen listened intently, asking incisive questions about global rollout, data ethics, and community impact. As the tour ended, she placed a gentle hand on my arm. Science is our greatest civilizing force. Use yours wisely. Then, smiling, she presented me with an insignia, Member of the Order of the British Empire. Tears blurred my vision as I accepted the honor, a testament not to revenge, but to resilience and redemption. Returning to Boston, my inbox teemed with congratulations from international partners. Manufacture scaled into multiple facilities, and we established training centers across Europe, Asia, and Africa. I often reflected on Father's violence, recognizing how it had tempered me like steel in the fire. Yet the accolades brought new scrutiny. Media outlets published exposés questioning the depth of my involvement, accusations of a behind-the-scenes puppeteer, whispers that I was the figurehead while investors pulled strings. Dr. Crane's minions resurfaced, echoing these rumors to sow doubt. One afternoon, I walked the garden path behind the sunroom, seeking solace in the roses I'd planted. My phone vibrated, another article, another smear campaign. I sank onto a bench, heart heavy. The fight now was for credibility, for the narrative of authenticity. I realized then, no achievement, no honor, could shield me from skepticism. But I had learned to repurpose pain into power. I opened my laptop and drafted an open letter to the global community, sharing candidly my journey, my trauma, my drive, my imperfections, and reaffirming my commitment to transparency and service. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the letter had gone viral, a wave of support and empathy washing over us. Patients shared their gratitude. Ethicists lauded our openness. Journalists praised the honesty. The tide had turned. That night, as I reclined in the meditation room, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. The house, once a battleground, had become the cradle of my destiny. Each room told a story of struggle transformed into strength. Tomorrow, I would oversee our first mobile screening unit's launch, taking the technology to remote communities where healthcare was scarce. But tonight, I closed my eyes and whispered into the darkness. This is only the beginning. The first rays of morning light filtered through the plantation shutters, casting long stripes of gold across the polished hardwood floors of Maple Avenue. Birds chirped softly, heralding a new dawn. For me, it was another day in the nexus of innovation and impact, yet today's mission carried a different weight. We were about to launch our first mobile screening unit into the rural heartlands of Appalachia, where healthcare deserts stretched for miles and early diagnoses could mean the difference between life and an unfulfilled death. I stood by the sunroom's bay window, coffee in hand, watching the mobile unit, a sleek van emblazoned with our logo, "Wait on the drive." Technicians loaded crates of equipment, sanitized headsets, and calibrated scanners. Volunteers carried patient information packets, ready to guide the first wave of visitors. Belle appeared beside me, her eyes alight with excitement. "Everything's on schedule. The community center opens at 9. Local news is here too." I inhaled deeply. "Perfect! Let's do this." Moments later, I climbed into the driver's seat of the unit. The van's interior gleamed under fluorescent lights. White walls lined with modular benches, a small kitchenette, and a dedicated scanning bay at the rear. As the engine roared to life, I felt a familiar thrill, the culmination of years of struggle, ambition, and redemption rolling down the street. The drive into the hills was serene, the winding road flanked by emerald forests and quaint clusters of wooden homes. Through my tinted windows, I watched the world shift from suburban calm to rural austerity. Signs warned of wildlife crossings and winding curves. Cell service flickered in patches. At the community center, a renovated schoolhouse with peeling paint and a chain-link fence, locals gathered on the steps, curiosity mingling with hope. Among them was Sarah Jenkins, a school teacher who first wrote to our foundation after losing her mother to undiagnosed Alzheimer's. Beside her stood retirees, farmers, and young families, all eager for a chance at early detection. I stepped onto the pavement, greeted by Mayor Thompson, a stout man with sun-weathered skin and a firm handshake. "Ms. Harper, thank you for bringing this to our town. You don't know what it means to these people." His gratitude struck a chord. This was the true measure of impact, far removed from polished labs and prestigious lectures. Inside the unit, I inaugurated the opening ceremony with a few words. "Today marks a new chapter for Maple Avenue Labs and for our partnership with communities like yours. This technology was born from personal adversity, but it belongs to you now. Let's walk the journey of health together." Applause rippled through the center. Local media snapped photos, and I felt the weight of responsibility settle over me as I began the first screenings. For hours, I guided patients to the scanning bay, held their hands as the headset settled, and monitored the readouts alongside technicians. Some faces lit with relief, others with tears. Tears of gratitude, of fear eased by knowledge. Sarah Jenkins stepped in, voice trembling. "I lost my mom because we didn't know. Thank you for this chance." I squeezed her shoulder. "We're here because of her, and for you." When the final scan concluded, I emerged from the unit covered in a mist of disinfectant and warmth of human connection. The community center buzzed with chatter, new friendships forged in shared hope. As the sun dipped low, I stood by the van, watching the team secure equipment. Belle approached, a worn notebook in hand. Preliminary data shows 15 cases of early-stage markers that would have gone undetected until symptoms onset. My breath caught. 15. 15 lives changed. She nodded. "And that's just today." Marcus joined us, phone in hand. "International shipments are delayed. Customs snag over export documentation. We might need to reroute through Rotterdam to meet our timelines." My mind shifted gears. The thrill of fieldwork was powerful, but global logistics demanded equal attention. "Do it! Coordinate with our European partners to expedite. We can't stall here." He saluted with a grin. "Consider it done." That night, back at Maple Avenue, I sank into the meditation room's cushions, the weight of fatigue heavy, but the pulse of achievement thrumming through me. I closed my eyes and replayed the day. Hopeful faces, whispered thanks, the gentle hum of the scanner, each moment a testament to purpose. Then my phone buzzed with a breaking news alert. Dr. Crane was launching a rival mobile pilot in the Midwest, backed by pharmaceutical interests that vowed to undercut our pricing. The headline read, "Harper's Tech versus Big Pharma, the battle for early detection." My chest tightened. Even as we brought care to the forgotten corners of America, adversaries sought to hijack our mission for profit. I opened a new draft email to our legal and operations teams. "Monitor Crane's pilot comprehensively. Document any discrepancies in pricing and ethics. Prepare to counter with our transparent model and patient-first protocols." As I typed, I realized that every victory would invite a new challenge. But now, standing at the intersection of innovation and compassion, I felt ready. The journey had taken me from bruised child to pioneering leader, each step carved by adversity, each triumph a defiance of those who sought to control me. Tomorrow, we'd launch our Royal Jubilee tour across Europe. The day after, a summit in Tokyo. Yet my mind was already mapping Appalachia's next stop, Africa's first drone-enabled screening, and the code updates to our algorithms. And through it all, one truth remained. This story belonged not to one person, but to every life we touched. I closed the laptop and whispered into the quiet house. Onward. The sun streamed through the skylight of the sunroom, illuminating the polished lab benches where our newest generation of neural scanners awaited assembly. I moved among my team, Bell adjusting calibration dials, Marcus reviewing distribution schedules, and our engineers nervously running final software checks. After a well-earned pause following the Appalachian pilot and our royal recognition, the pace had only intensified. But today marked a milestone, the global rollout of our mobile screening fleet, starting with 50 units destined for underserved regions across Africa and South America. I paused at the work table, inhaling the scent of warm solder and antiseptic. In my hand, I held a photograph pinned to the wall. A young teacher from Nairobi, who'd lost her father's early-stage diagnosis to lack of access. Beneath her, a note, "For them, we persevere." This simple message rekindled everything I had built, from scars to innovation. "Vivi," Bell called, voice urgent. "We've got a message from customs in Lagos. They're holding shipments at the port over missing certification paperwork, and volunteer orientation starts in 3 days." My chest tightened. Logistics had always been our Achilles' heel. If those units sat stranded, communities would wait, and lives could hang in the balance. I took a breath. Let's pivot, activate Plan Delta, air freight those 10 units, coordinate with our local NGO partners to expedite on-ground clearance. I'll handle the diplomatic outreach personally. Marcus glanced at me, admiration in his eyes. On it. Moments later, I was on a call with the Nigerian consul, my voice firm yet respectful as I outlined the project's humanitarian imperative. I promised on-the-ground training, local hiring, and free screenings for all low-income patients. By the call's end, I had secured expedited clearance and an official letter of support that would unlock our shipments. As I set the phone down, a ringing alert caught my attention. A live feed from our Berlin training center, where new technicians were assembling scanners using our open-source manual. The stream wavered as enthusiastic hands worked deftly, bridging continents through shared purpose. A surge of pride overcame me. Across oceans, we were one team, every desk, every village, every city square, bound by a common goal, to rewrite what was possible in neurological care. Yet challenges loomed. On my desk lay a draft of the year-end financial report. Operating costs were skyrocketing, and investor patience was waning for profitability. We had to innovate not only in science but in sustainability. I turned to Marcus. Time to unveil our subscription model, community-backed funding that guarantees affordable rates while securing long-term support. Draft the proposal with tiered community sponsorships by this afternoon. He nodded. Consider it done. In the quiet that followed, I reflected on how far we'd come, from the battered child who learned to save herself through tenacity, to a global pioneer reshaping healthcare infrastructure. Each part of my journey, each obstacle, each bruise and breakthrough, had forged me into someone capable of charting new horizons. Today, as I stepped out onto the Maple Avenue porch to dispatch the first batch of mobile units, I felt the weight of legacy transformed into promise. Beneath the chandelier of stars overhead, I whispered to the memories of Father's house, now a hive of hope. This is for every voice that cried for help and every mind yet to remember. Morning light filtered through the stained glass of the parlor's bay window, casting fractured rainbows across the mahogany desk where the draft of our subscription model lay thick with penciled annotations. I traced the lines of the proposal: community sponsorship tiers, nonprofit partnerships, sliding scale fees, and knew that this next phase would define our legacy, not merely rescuing families from the abyss of neurological decline, but forging sustainable systems that endure beyond headlines. I inhaled deeply, tasting the faint aroma of Earl Grey tea lingering in the air. From across the room, Bell called out, "The Tokyo Summit just confirmed. Our keynote slot has been moved to primetime. They want you to unveil the Global Subscription Initiative live." My pulse quickened. The world was watching, and this was our moment to shift from episodic triumphs to lasting transformation. I rose from the desk and paced toward the hearth, its embers still warm from last night's meeting with Marcus and our financial architects. Our argument had crystallized. Innovations alone cannot cure social inequity. Only a model that balanced profit with purpose could carry the torch forward. Marcus materialized at my side, sliding a tablet into my hand. "Here are the finalized tier structures, partner endorsements, and impact projections." I scanned the figures. Percentages of net proceeds pledged to low-income clinics, projected outreach numbers, community-led governance boards. Each data point was a promise to the millions still beyond our reach. "This is more than numbers, Vivi," he said softly. "It's our covenant with the world." I nodded, steel fortifying my spine. Let's honor it. The flight to Tokyo was a red-eye through northern skies, and I slept fitfully, mind flickering with speeches and spreadsheets. Dawn broke over the sprawling skyline, neon signs still flickering against the soft pink of morning. The Imperial Conference Center loomed, glass and steel labyrinths echoing with chatter in half a dozen languages. We moved through security and protocol with practiced efficiency, Bell by my side, Marcus monitoring live feeds from Maple Avenue. Backstage, I reviewed my notes. Opener, gratitude to our global partners, data highlights, clinics onboarded, lives saved. The new model, accessible, equitable, community-driven. And the crescendo, an invitation for audience participation, pledging their support live via an interactive app. My heart pounded as the announcer called my name in English, then Japanese. The curtain rose, and applause thundered like summer storms. "Konnichiwa," I began, voice firm and warm. "It is an honor to stand before you today on behalf of the millions whose voices have been silenced by the slow creep of neurological disease. But today we ring the bell of hope, not despair." Slides flickered behind me, images of the Maple Avenue house, the Sunroom Lab, patients in Appalachia and Nairobi, volunteers in Lagos and London. Each face stared back, a testament to shared humanity. "Our journey began with personal pain," I continued, "but it grew into a movement of compassion, and today we launched the Harper Global Access Initiative. Through our subscription-based model, every community can secure affordable early detection. Hospitals, schools, and civic groups become stakeholders in health, ensuring no one is left behind." A hush fell. Then, the room sparked to life with cheers, as I concluded. "Join us. Together, we are more than innovators. We are guardians of tomorrow's minds." As the applause swelled, I tapped my phone, watching live commitment pulses race across the screen. Tokyo, New Delhi, Sao Paulo, Paris, Cairo. The world was embracing our vision. But backstage, as my team celebrated, a hush fell over Marcus. He held a note printed in red. A foreign government had quietly authorized a competing technology, one nearly identical in form but untested, deployed through military channels without ethical oversight. Their press release claimed it a sovereign imperative for national security. My breath caught. Even as we forged bridges of hope, others were weaponizing our own blueprint. I looked to Belle, eyes blazing. "They've crossed the line. We can't let our work become a tool for coercion." Her face hardened with resolve. "We need a global ethics council, binding agreements that protect medical technology from misuse." I swallowed the rising anger. "Then that's our next mission. Ensure that healing never becomes harm." As the Tokyo lights shimmered beyond the window, I felt the pull of destiny. This was no longer a personal crusade or corporate campaign. It was a battle for the soul of science itself. And as my plane lifted off for home, I whispered into the hum of the engines, "The next battle begins now." The golden haze of early morning filtered through the lace curtains as I stood in the parlor, reviewing the latest deployment metrics on my tablet. 50 mobile units were now active across Africa and South America, 30 in European partnership programs, and the prototype fleet had ushered in California and Texas initiatives. The numbers glowed green, but behind every figure lay stories of resilience and challenges that still demanded my attention. Bell entered, fresh from a virtual strategy session with our legal counsel. We've received notice. Dr. Crane's patent appeal will be heard in international arbitration next month. They're seeking injunctions in both the EU and the US simultaneously. I steadied myself. Crane's relentless litigation was designed to drain our resources, sow doubt, and ultimately suppress the technology's reach. Then we prepare a global defense, I said. Coordinate with our IP counsel. Focus on priority dates, inventor testimony, and our documented emergency protocols. We'll show arbitration panels that our innovation predates his claims, and that our trial data, while unconventional, met the highest ethical standards. She nodded, determination shining in her eyes. On it. I turned to the sunroom's glass doors, where the first light of day danced across soldering irons and 3D printed components. I walked inside, enveloped by the familiar hum of creation. Each bench held a team member, engrossed in crafting next-generation sensors or refining the adaptive algorithms that had made our device predictive and personalized. A knock sounded at the lab door. Marcus strode in, carrying a tray of espresso shots. For moments like this, he said with a half-smile. Lifesaver, I replied, taking a cup. I sipped thoughtfully, eyes drifting to the digital clock ticking toward 9 o'clock. The arbitration hearing opened at 10 o'clock local time. You ready? He asked. I inhaled deeply, more than ever. Canada, where the hearing took place, lay just beyond our eastern border, and our small delegation, counsel, engineers, and myself, had flown in overnight. The hearing room was austere. Mat walls, seating for 10 counsel teams, and a raised bench for the arbitrators. As counsel laid out our defense, I felt the weight of every challenge we'd faced. The bruises that taught me resilience, the eviction that gave me agency, the home I reclaimed that became a world-changing laboratory. I took detailed notes, ready to testify if needed. When the arbitrators called my name, I stepped forward into the cool glare of formality. They asked for an overview of the invention timeline, emergency use rationale, and evidence chain proving priority. I recounted the pivotal moments. The secret prototyping in the parlor, the nightly builds in the sunroom, the emergency trial for father's condition. I described the data logs, time-stamped filings, and letters from our ethics board, each document a thread in the tapestry of innovation. I watched as their expressions softened, not to pity, but to respect the convergence of necessity and ingenuity. The hearing recessed, and outside my team exhaled in relief. They respect your candor, Bell said. The panel seems inclined to favor our position. I allowed myself a small smile. Truth is our strongest asset. Back in Boston, operations never slowed. The global subscription rollout demanded oversight. We launched regional advisory boards, staffed mobile screening centers in underserved U.S. counties, and began planning a digital telehealth interface for remote diagnostics. One afternoon, I walked through Father's study, where his leather-bound journals lay open beside my grandfather's. The room, bathed in lamplight, spoke of legacies and choices. Abuse transformed into purpose, rage redirected into resolve. I paused and sat at the desk, opening their pages. My grandfather's elegant script traced lines on building community resilience. Father's shaky handwriting confessed regret and gratitude. With fingers trembling, I added a note of my own. May future generations learn that power is not taken through force, but through empathy and innovation. That evening, Marcus joined me on the veranda. You've changed lives, he said quietly. I gazed at the horizon, where city lights met starlight. We've only just begun. Tomorrow, I would address the UN's Health Council on equitable technology access, and next week, I'd unveil our telehealth expansion. The battles ahead, legal, logistical, ethical, would test us, but I felt fortified by every step I'd taken. As night fell, I extinguished the study lamp and locked the journal away, its pages now a bridge between past and future. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, pausing in the corridor. Each door, the meditation room, the sunroom, Father's study, stood as a marker of transformation. Morning light glanced off the polished chrome of the mobile unit, ready at the cul-de-sac in downtown Nairobi, but today's destination lay elsewhere, remote clinics in the Rift Valley, communities untouched by modern preventative medicine. As I stepped into our bus-like vessel, the scent of antiseptic and fresh polish mingled with the dusty air drifting through open vents. Belle and I exchanged a focused nod. Today, our mission was to extend our reach to those truly beyond the margins. We bumped along dirt roads, the landscape shifting from acacia-dotted plains to the undulating ridges of volcanic hills. At each stop, a schoolhouse, a community center, even the courtyard of a small health post, locals gathered, curious and hopeful. Volunteers, many of whom we trained locally, guided elders and toddlers alike into the scanning bay. Each scan was a translation of neural whispers into actionable data. Who might need early intervention? Who might benefit from lifestyle adjustments? Who required immediate follow-up? Between sessions, I spoke with local leaders, a teacher, an elder, and a young nurse who had grown up here. They spoke of isolation, of seeing loved ones decline with no understanding of why, and of the stigma that accompanied mental deterioration. Their words landed in my heart like pulses, reinforcing the gravity and humanity of our work. Hours later, as we packed up under a setting sun, Belle approached me, her face illuminated by the glow of a tablet. Preliminary results. We've identified early markers in 8% of today's volunteers. Without detection, most would have waited years for a diagnosis. I nodded, voice thick with emotion. Then we're rewriting destinies. Back in Boston, the hum of global operations never ceased. Marcus coordinated expansion efforts in Eastern Europe, negotiating partnerships with local health ministries, while Bell spearheaded RAND for vaccine integration, exploring synergies between our diagnostic platform and preventative therapies. My role became less about the lab's minutiae and more about vision, structuring alliances, ensuring equity, and safeguarding ethical standards across every time zone. One evening, Belle burst into my study, excitement crackling in her voice. Regional health authorities in India have approved our telehealth pilot. We can start virtual consultations next week. My heart soared. Telehealth meant that even the most isolated villages could tap into our global network of specialists. I immediately convened a meeting with our digital engineering team to fast-track the user interface for low-bandwidth environments. But beneath the triumph lay an undercurrent of urgency. Regulatory agencies in several countries were demanding custom adherence reviews, pushing back on emergency approval clauses we'd invoked during the crisis phase. The pressures of standardization threatened to slow deployments precisely where speed mattered most. That night, I drafted a policy proposal, a global medical emergency accord, invoking international cooperation frameworks to allow provisional approvals under strict oversight. The accord would balance rapid deployment with optional real-world evidence collection, empowering local authorities while ensuring patient safety. The proposal went out to health ministers and WHO representatives. Within hours, replies trickled in, some in eager support, others cautious or silent. I held my breath, yearning for consensus that would free us to continue saving lives unimpeded. In the days that followed, as we rolled out telehealth in Chennai's slums and mobile units in Kenyan villages, I tracked the accord's progress. Late one night, an email pinged. The WHO had endorsed a pilot framework based on our accord, instructing member states to adopt provisional pathways. Relief and exhilaration crashed over me in equal measure. I closed my laptop and sat in the silence of Father's study. His journals lay open beside mine, a silent lineage of purpose, evolving across generations. I whispered a quiet thanks to the fathers and daughters who came before, whose trials had shaped this moment. Tomorrow I would address the WHO Assembly in Geneva. The stakes had grown global, and the responsibility weighed heavy. But each scan, each partnership, each policy victory reaffirmed why I endured bruises, litigation, and relentless doubt. As dawn crept across the horizon, I gathered my notes and pinned them to the board behind my desk, a constellation of missions converging toward a single star, healing minds. The morning after the Nairobi launch, the hum of my phone signaled an incoming briefing from our board of directors. I stood in the sunroom lab, the very heart of our operation, as Marcus joined me on the conference call. Our faces hovered on the screen alongside stern investors, legal advisors, and our cybersecurity chief. "Miss Harper," began Eleanor Winthrop, our lead investor, her tone crisp as the autumn air. "We applaud your vision and the global impact, but we need concrete projections for profitability by Q4. The board is concerned that sustaining free or low-cost services may not be financially viable long-term." A hush fell over the digital room. I felt the weight of their expectations pressing down, a reminder that even the most noble enterprises must survive in the marketplace. I inhaled deeply, the scent of solder and polished wood grounding me. "Eleanor, I understand the necessity of financial sustainability. Our subscription model has already brought in significant community backing. As of this morning, pre-commitments reached 20% above our initial targets. We're negotiating bulk purchase agreements with National Health Services, which will secure predictable revenue streams. By integrating telehealth consultation fees on a sliding scale, we can bolster our margins without compromising access." I paused, letting the figures sink in. "Additionally, our partnership with global insurers is in final negotiation, projected to add a 15% margin by next quarter." Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'll need detailed financials and binding letters of intent by the end of the week. Otherwise, we'll have to reassess our position." As the call ended, I exhaled, sensing both the peril and opportunity ahead. Mining social good from capital markets was a dance on a razor's edge. I turned to Marcus. "Gather the CFO and legal team. Let's draft those letters and tighten our financial forecast. We can't afford delays." He nodded, determination lighting his features. Later, as I walked the corridors of Maple Avenue, now lined with photographs of mobile units in action, I reflected on the paradox. The very investors who fueled our scale now demanded returns that could jeopardize our mission's ethos. This was the personal reckoning I'd known would come, balancing altruism with accountability. That afternoon, I huddled in Father's study with our CFO, Dr. Hannah Kim, and corporate counsel. The oak desk groaned under stacks of agreements, projections, and risk assessments. "We need to segment our offerings," Hannah proposed, tapping at her tablet. "Keep core diagnostics free for low-income brackets, while offering premium data analytics to research institutions and pharmaceutical partners that could close our margin gap." Counsel, Mr. Alvarez, frowned. "We must ensure we don't alienate our public image. Any paywall must be transparent, consent-based, and in full compliance with global data protection laws." I nodded, steepling my fingers. "Let's craft a dual-layer structure, public service tier and professional tier. We'll publicize the model openly, with all revenue allocations published quarterly. Transparency will be our shield." As I drafted the blueprint, I wandered to the window overlooking the garden, a mosaic of rose bushes and saplings I'd planted after Part 11's reflection. Growth, I reminded myself, required roots deep and spread wide. That evening, at a town hall-style virtual meeting streamed globally, I took the stage once more. Patients, partners, and investors tuned in from every continent. "Today we unveil our Harper Sustainability Framework," I announced, unveiling infographics showing revenue allocations, cost structures, and impact metrics. Our commitment: reinvest 60% of profits into community screenings, 10% into R&D, 20% into telehealth expansion, and 10% into operational reserves to ensure continuity. We invite you, patients, advocates, and shareholders, to hold us accountable. Chats erupted with applause emojis and supportive messages. The clarity of purpose resonated. As the stream wound down, Bell messaged, "Investor sentiment positive, board meeting tomorrow morning." I allowed myself a small smile. We were bridging worlds again, the world of profit and the world of people. Still, a lingering question tugged at me. In crafting financial frameworks, how do I guard the soul of this mission from being swallowed by spreadsheets? The answer lay in vigil, daily reaffirmation of why I began this journey. That night, I sat in the meditation room, eyes closed, breathing deeply. I visualized every patient's face, every community's hope, every lab bench transformed into a bastion of healing. Tomorrow I would stand before the board, armed with transparency and data. But tonight, I reaffirmed a personal vow. No number would ever obscure the human stories that fueled this revolution. Dawn broke over Maple Avenue with a hush, the world still cocooned in pre-dawn calm, as I prepared for my address to the World Health Organization Assembly in Geneva. The weight of expectation settled over me. After 17 parts of relentless innovation, advocacy, and personal reckoning, this moment would test the coherence of our vision on the world stage. I packed my notes with care, a synthesis of global deployment metrics, patient impact narratives, and the ethical framework we drafted in Tokyo. Each slide represented not just data, but lives shifted toward hope. At the airport, I paused before boarding, the Maple Avenue house receding behind me in memory, its sunlit parlor, the lab's quiet hum, father's study lined with journals, and the meditation room's silent sanctuary. I inhaled, steeling myself for the journey ahead. Geneva greeted me with crisp alpine air and the hum of delegates from every nation. The Palais des Nations stood as a beacon of global governance, its grand colonnades adorned with UN flags. Backstage, I joined a panel of experts, epidemiologists, ethicists, and patient advocates. We each presented brief overviews before the General Assembly convened. When my turn arrived, I stepped to the podium, eyes scanning the sea of name tags and interpreter booths. I began in French, then transitioned to English. Honored delegates, I stand before you not as a lone innovator, but as a daughter who transformed personal pain into a global imperative. Our journey, from a childhood home marked by violence to the halls of scientific acclaim, illustrates the power of resilience. But resilience alone is insufficient. We must build systems that prioritize equity, ethics, and empowerment. I clicked to the next slide, a world map dotted with mobile unit deployments, telehealth hubs, and pilot program sites. Today, our neural diagnostic technology spans 6 continents, impacting millions. Yet, the true measure of success is not scale alone, but sustainable, community-driven stewardship. I unveiled the Global Medical Emergency Accord we proposed, binding guidelines to authorize provisional deployment of medical innovations during crises, with transparent oversight and mandatory data sharing. The Accord's principles echoed through the hall. 1. Patient-centered urgency, action without bureaucratic delay when lives hang in balance. 2. Ethical oversight, real-time review by local and international bodies. 3. Transparency, open access to deployment data and financial allocations. 4. Sovereign collaboration, respect for local governance and cultural contexts. As the final bullet appeared, the assembly chamber erupted in applause. Delegates whispered pledges of support, and several ministers raised their cards to co-sponsor the accord. Afterward, representatives queued to shake my hand. The Nigerian health minister, the European Commissioner for Health, and even Dr. Crane's lead patent counsel offered curt nods, some grudging, some genuine. The Accord's passage would ensure our technology served healing, not profit or power. Late that evening, outside the Palais, I stood with Marcus and Belle under the soft glow of street lamps. The Accord had passed its initial vote. Full ratification awaited committee review, but the momentum was undeniable. Belle exhaled. We did it. I placed a hand on the cold granite of the plaza railing, eyes distant. This is the culmination of every chapter so far. Marcus smiled. And the beginning of a new era. Quote, as Geneva slept, I typed a message to Father. Your little girl changed the world. His reply came minutes later. I'm proud of you, Vivienne. Tears welled in my eyes. In that moment, the cycle of abuse reversed. No longer a legacy of hurt, but a legacy of hope. Tomorrow, the UN press conference beckons. And next week, a summit in Tokyo on telehealth integration. But tonight I allowed myself a quiet victory, standing beneath a global sky whispering, this story is far from over. The first rays of dawn kissed the horizon as I climbed down the steps of Maple Avenue, my mind alive with the possibilities that lay ahead. Part 18's victory at the WHO summit had sent ripples across the global health community, And now, as I prepared to personally oversee the rollout of our telehealth integration in Tokyo, I felt the familiar thrumming of anticipation. But the world I'd helped forge was never far from its shadows. As I stepped into the sleek arrival lounge of Tokyo International Airport, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Bell. Marcus in Boston reports unusual activity. Our domestic telehealth servers are under sustained DDoS attack. They're hitting us hard. A cold knot formed in my stomach. The same faceless foes who had tried cyber ransom now sought to paralyze our lifeline of care. Without telehealth, countless remote patients would be cut off. I made for the executive lounge, calling Bell as I went. Confirm scale and origin? Multiple vectors, global botnet, she replied. Our IT team is containing, but if it intensifies, we'll lose bandwidth. The delicate balance between innovation and vulnerability weighed on me. Engage our backup nodes in Europe and Australia. Notify partners to reroute traffic. I'll brief them in Tokyo on protocol. My pulse throbbed with adrenaline as I deplaned into the neon-lit streets of Tokyo. The city's energy seemed muted by my worries, though the faces of commuters blurred past in a river of determination. I hailed a driver, scanning my notes for the evening's presentations. En route to the Hotel Okura, a call came from Marcus. They've escalated, attempting to breach patient records. We're standing by IR Protocol Delta. Authorities are involved. Privacy and security had always been my twin imperatives. A breach would not only violate trust but endanger lives. Keep me posted. Prioritize patient data isolation. I'll address this immediately after the symposium. Quote, the conference hall was a testament to Japanese precision. Rows of delegates in tailored suits, translation headsets poised on each desk. Minutes before my keynote, I joined a rapid-fire video conference with Bell and Marcus, grounding myself in the crisis. Telehealth servers are stable, Bell reported. Reroutes holding at 95%. IR teams neutralizing persistent threats. A surge of relief warmed me. Good. Notify me if latency exceeds 15%. And prepare our social media channels with pre-approved statements on data security. I closed the call, smoothing the lapels of my blazer. It was time to step back into my other world, visionary and orator. The auditorium hushed as I ascended the stage. Behind me, a panoramic montage displayed telehealth's expansion. Rural clinics, urban hospitals, community centers. Every image, a link in the chain of life-saving care. Konnichiwa, I greeted, inclining my head. Thank you for gathering to explore the future of digital medicine. Telehealth is no longer a convenience. It is a necessity, today more than ever, as threats to our systems underscore the fragility of progress. I spoke of resilience, how redundancy, ethical governance, and global collaboration fortify our networks. I revealed our newest innovation, an AI-driven self-healing network protocol that anticipates cyber threats and isolates them in real time, ensuring uninterrupted patient access. Gasps of admiration rose as I detailed the system's self-learning firewalls, its decentralized blockchain ledger for immutable data integrity, and its seamless integration with local healthcare providers. I present to you the Harper Shield Protocol, a living armor for digital health ecosystems worldwide. Delegates leaned forward, eyes alight with possibility. The session erupted into vigorous discussion as partners and tech experts clamored to integrate the protocol into existing frameworks. After the keynote, I exited to a reception where Japanese dignitaries and tech leaders offered handshakes and questions. A senior executive from SoftBank approached, voice low but earnest. Ms. Harper, your synergy of technology and compassion is unparalleled. We want to incorporate the Shield into our 5G health initiative. Shall we discuss terms? I smiled, heart buoyed by the promise of robust partnerships. Let's begin. That night, back in the hotel's garden courtyard, I stole a moment's respite beneath the cherry blossoms. My phone vibrated with a final update. Shield deployed. No further attacks detected. Telehealth services normal. I closed my eyes, breathing in the delicate scent of blooms and the electric pulse of triumph. Around me, Tokyo's lights shimmered, a city reborn through solidarity and innovation. But, as does every chapter, the world beyond shifted. An evening news alert flashed across the concierge screen. International Tribunal to review ethics of neuroenhancement tech. Harper Diagnostics cited in landmark case. The battle for healing had once again intersected with the frontier of human augmentation, and the definition of treatment was about to be challenged. The first blush of dawn painted the Maple Avenue sky in soft rose and gold as I stood on the front steps, surveying the scene before me. This would be the culmination. A moment I'd envisioned since that first day in the kitchen, measuring cocoa powder through swollen tears, vowing that one day I would reclaim control. Today, I would watch the inaugural launch of our global neurocare network. Mobile units on 5 continents, telehealth hubs in dozens of languages, and the Harper Shield protocol defending every byte of data from invisible foes. Inside the sunroom, transformed now into a global command center, Bell monitored real-time feeds from Nairobi, Tokyo, Boston, and newly activated units in Mumbai and Sao Paulo. The walls glowed with world clocks, viral impact maps, and live patient stories flickering across screens. A hush fell as I took my place at the central console. Marcus, by my side, gave me a reassuring nod. Behind us, Father, seated in a specially configured chair with our restorative neuromodulation device attached, smiled with pride, a symbol of resilience and redemption that had sparked this revolution. Launch sequence ready, Bell announced, her voice steady, despite the gravity of the moment. I placed my hand on the launch button, a small silver key atop a glass panel etched with our family crest. I drew in a breath, feeling the weight of every struggle and triumph that had led me here. For every life denied hope, every mind silenced by disease, this is our answer, I said into the control room microphone. Initiating global activation. The button clicked, and across the world, devices powered on, scanners whirred to life, data streams ignited, and patients in remote villages, urban clinics, and bustling metropolises alike felt the hum of possibility. Live video feeds showed smiles, tears of joy, and hands clasped in gratitude. In Boston, our flagship lab's staff cheered. In Lagos, community health workers danced. In Berlin, our European consortium applauded. In Seoul, telehealth patients exclaimed in Korean as the Shield protocol detected and neutralized a simulated cyber threat in real time. As the crescendo of celebration washed over me, I felt a soft hand on my arm. Father's eyes gleamed. "You've built something unimaginable," he whispered, voice filled with emotion. "I'm proud of you, Vivienne." Tears welled in my eyes as I embraced him, the full circle of our journey crystallizing in that hug. The abused child, the driven scientist, the compassionate leader, and the redeemed daughter, all converging into this moment of collective triumph. As the world's neurocare network hummed in synchronized harmony, I addressed the live global audience via holographic feed. Today, we stand united in purpose and hope. Together, we have rewritten the script of neurological disease, from fear and delay to discovery and care. But our story does not end here. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.